Thank you for joining us for this episode. Today we're joined by Dr. Jaclyn Garlich, and she's going to be speaking to us about becoming an Instagram sensation, 2020 glance, and the future of Eyecare education on social media on The OI Show. Thank you for joining us for this episode. We're with Dr. Jaclyn Garlich, and Jackie, as many of you know, has incredible online resources for us. Amongst them, probably the one that we most know her for is 2020 Glance. So thank you for joining us for this episode, Jackie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super stoked. Jackie and I were just talking about how it's really cool to meet each other throughout the pandemic, and probably would have met at a conference somewhere sometime, but here we are. We're meeting virtually and getting to know each other a little bit this way. Do you think you're going to attend any conferences in 2021?
I'm definitely going to go to Academy. I am unsure what else I'll be attending. What are you attending?
Right. Probably SECO, AOA, Academy, Vision Expo West, probably. So we'll see what comes up. But yeah. So Jackie, you have this Instagram. So tell us a little bit about this, the way you became such a rad Instagram sensation.
Well, I saw, I'll tell you, I saw a need and then I just filled that need. And the need was, this is how like every story I feel like starts. It's like, I was having trouble keeping up with optometry news and felt like I was not paying attention to that. And I discovered many of my colleagues felt the same. And even though we attended all of our CE, it's just not the same as there's a bunch of things that happen day to day that we just don't know about. And so I actually started writing this optometry newsletter, 2020 Glance, and it's that still happens. That's just a once a week email that goes to your inbox. And then I was like, you know what I should do is turn this into an Instagram and meet people where they are. I was on Instagram all the time and I was like, this might be nice if I could just get some little snippets of news this way. And so then I just made it into the little news, the news that I write about in the email. I just sort of then make that into an Instagram post. And
so tell us what is, let's use your newsletter. Tell us a little bit about that. And then the Instagram post, for people who may have not seen it, what is it?
So the newsletter is a once a week email that gives a rundown on clinically relevant optometry news over the past week-ish. So there's 3 sections to the email. One's called Your Rundown, which will include any recent studies that are clinically applicable. There's a What Your Patient Might Ask You section, which talks about things that have been in the news that, patients will sometimes come in and say oh, did you see that article about whatever? So I talk about that. And then there's a social media section that sort of has more fun kind of things in it. But the whole newsletter, the whole email itself is short. And the idea is that I'm giving small digestible information so that you don't feel like you have to read this dense study. You can get the main points without having to really dive in. And I certainly link out to studies if people want to read more about them. I mean, I read them, but I just sort of condense it into a more easy to read format. And most people, this goes out at 5 a.m. So most people read that within the first 3 hours of when that email sent out. So no one wants to read the N was 72,000 people. No one wants to read really dense information first thing in the morning. So this is a way to sort of, kind of condense it in a really easy to digest format.
Yeah. I would encourage you to do a poll sometime to find out what percentage of people read it before they get out of bed. Yeah. I would imagine that it's the vast majority of everybody, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I should do a poll. It's a good idea.
It's something like 80-90% of people, that's the first thing they do when they wake up, right? Is look at their phone, something.
Yeah.
So maybe they're getting all the Eyecare news that they need for the day, right? In the week.
Right.
And then your Instagram, you started that after the newsletter. And
I think I actually might have started it around the same time. Like I started writing the email and then I was just
This
sort of,
is 2016. So you've
this is
been going on for like
2016.
6 years.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's been going on a long time. I didn't quite realize that. But yeah, in 2016, I started doing it and I kind of floated that email to a few friends and then it just sort of grew from there. Like people passed it to other people. But I think I actually did start the Instagram account kind of around the same time. I don't know. I can actually go back and tell you when I started that Instagram, but it was this similar concept is that you would have these little easy to digest news snippets in your Instagram feed and you can scroll
Mm-hmm.
past it if it doesn't interest you. Let's say it's about peds and you don't see peds or care about peds or something. You can like move on past it. Not that no one should care about peds, but you can like move past it. But you can also just take like a minute. It's probably less than a minute for you to read about
Yeah.
it and feel like you actually are caught up and like understand, like have learned something. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I did start them about the same time actually. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's short, and if you want to learn more, you can read more of what she's written. And I think it's just an incredible way to get short snippets in your news, especially if you're just cruising through your social media and you decide maybe you don't want to like your friends' posts. You can like Jackie's posts, right?
yeah,
So
that's good.
what would you say? And this is a this on every single one of the posts. I'm sure you learned something, but what have you learned about optometry or yourself? That's a really global question. But what has this kind of taught you, or how has it made you as a clinician?
This number one does make me feel like I am more up to date because the whole premise of me wanting something like this is so that I could read this short little thing and feel caught up, and that did backfire because now I then read all of the things and to then summarize it. But so I would say that I feel like I am more up to date with like what's happening with news and research and that sort of thing. But it made me realize that a lot of people think the way I think and learn the way I learn. And I think I sort of realized that when I was a student, I just really have to break things down into smaller sections and start from the ground and then sort of build up. Like, okay, what's the question of the study? Why did they need to do the study? Like, what does this teach us? Like, how is this going to make me practice any differently? Just like the very bulleted sort of like thought process that I
Hmm.
do, I find that a lot of people actually find that probably
Yeah,
think that way as well.
like 12,000 of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty impressive. So you're in clinical practice, right? Tell us a
I
little
am.
bit about. She was just telling me their EHR went down today, and
Yes.
we were milling over how lovely that is.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we all deal with the same heartaches, right? So tell me about your practice. Like, where do you practice? Who are you as a clinician, and so
Mhm.
forth?
Yeah, so I practice
You
in
see
Boston.
peds, right?
I, this is gonna like get me in trouble. I don't see a lot of peds. No. I practice in Boston. I bought my practice a year ago after working in it since 2018. And we are a dry eye specialty office. So it's also a sort of boutique optical in the front and, more sort of emerging dry eye specialty practice in the back. So
Hmm.
I'm a relatively new practice owner. I bought it January 1st, 2020. Is that not the worst time to buy a
Wow,
practice?
that is phenomenal.
I know.
Congratulations,
Thank you. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I think that would be. What year did you graduate optometry school?
2010.
Okay, so you practiced for 10 years and then you bought this practice and you have been kind of working your way into it for a couple of years. That's congratulations.
Well,
You're
I will
there,
tell
right?
you, yeah, I guess. Okay. But I will tell you, I actually had zero goals of owning my own practice up until like, probably 10 months before I bought the practice. The current owner was like, "Are you sure you don't want to buy this practice? Like, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to ask you, like, you can have, like, I'll sell it to you if you want it. If not, I'm going to sell it to so and so." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know. Wait, do I want this? Like, I don't know." But I spent my whole career never, ever wanting to own a practice. I just felt like it was too many headaches. But it still is headaches, but it's also still great.
Mhm. Yes, they're your headaches, right? So
Yeah, they
you
are.
get to deal with them
They
for
are.
better or worse,
Yeah.
right? Very cool. So, has being a practice owner changed anything about how you present data, or do you do more practice management, or are you pretty clinically based with 2020 plans?
I really don't do practice management. I don't feel like
Yeah,
that has changed anything. I mean, the whole idea when I started writing this is I want to speak to doctors that are seeing patients in the exam room. And what does that doctor need to know in the exam room to, potentially change the way that they're going to treat a patient, and or be able to answer those questions that patients ask. So I still always write it with a very much a clinical mind, and I don't really include practice management stuff.
mm-hmm,
Mm-mm.
mm-hmm. Cool. Where do you get your information? You read a lot, right? You have to be really well versed in what's going on in the eye care space from the news, but also from research. So how do you go about getting your info?
Well, I visit a few sites pretty often. I go to Eyewire a lot.
Hmm.
Eyewire is very helpful. Um, gosh, where else am I doing? I mean, I also get a lot of emails. I should say that. And I instead of like
Sure.
trashing them, I actually do go through. I like the Vision Monday, or I can't, no, I don't
Hmm.
even remember. I'm like giving a shot. There's like, I think I get some review email, like any email. I have subscribed for everything. I feel like so.
Yeah.
I legit do a very quick scan of those and then sort of, save it if I think I'm going to want to read about that. I also get like Google alerts sent to me for various
Sure.
keywords. Yeah, I am in my email a lot.
Sounds like it. Right? I mean, this is no small task, right? Because for everything you post, you probably read four or five or seven things in
Yeah,
addition to that. So
yes,
you really are a failure in a lot of ways in that you tried to find something simple and then you created something simple for everybody else by making it very complex for
I am
yourself.
huge failure. Huge. Yes, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, no, I think it's phenomenal though. It's such a great resource. And for those of you who haven't checked it out, you're certainly welcome to do that. I'm going to put a link to her Instagram page, but also to her newsletter in the show notes. And I think that there's some really, really cool information. How do you see the future of educating change? You've changed the way that we're educated in a lot of ways, made even more than the big educators that are out there, right? The Academy and the AOA. I mean, you're bringing about a level of education that's different than even those groups are. How do you kind of see that we're going to change the world of education in the future?
I mean, I do feel like even with COVID, the way we educate our colleagues has changed drastically, and that everything is more virtual, and in a way is just, like I said before, like meeting people where they are. There is, I think, a huge growth of like TikTok and people doing great education on TikTok. I don't know if
Hmm.
you have this app, but it's extremely educated, not even just in eye care. I'm just like scrolling through and I'm like, oh my gosh, I learned that from Durham. Like, huh, who knew that? Like, I think it's all about, I don't know. I mean, there's certainly use in having like a website dedicated to news, but you also have to go to the people, and the people are on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or wherever they are. But I I don't really know. I mean, I certainly don't think there's not going to be conferences. Like that's like the most fun thing I think is to go to a conference, and
Hmm.
like be surrounded by your peers. But the day to day is a lot of like going to where the people are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's some really good things that are coming out of social media education, possibly in a way that we didn't have 5 years ago. Obviously, because we've had, Instagram has really blown up since then. TikTok obviously came out. Um, that I think that it's bringing about a way for us to get maybe less in depth, but more breadth of education.
Totally.
And for those of us who weren't reading a lot and don't and we're going to journal articles and throwaway journals, if I may, to receive that information. that's once a month. But we're able to catch that information a lot sooner. And if it's something that we can incorporate into our exam room, we can do it a lot quicker. So historically, we would go to conferences and then we would incorporate something into our exams. We would read through those throwaway publications, incorporate that stuff into our exam room. And now we're potentially getting something on the daily that we are hearing that we can incorporate and can change us. So it's escalating us as a profession a lot faster, I think, and giving us that type of insight, whether it's from somebody like you mentioned on TikTok in the derm world, or we hear something about diabetes from somebody who's really novelly bringing that education around. I think we're getting that and incorporating it a lot quicker into our profession.
Totally.
I don't know if you agree.
I totally agree. I mean, the one of the problems I felt was that I had a stack of journals sitting like in their plastic wrap. Like I never actually opened it because I was.
Did you feel guilty?
I did.
Me too. I did too.
I did, and I think like I was too busy in clinic, and then by the time you start on a study, like your patient's up, and like you got to, it's just it wasn't ever like a good rhythm for me, and so I literally had this stack, and I felt really bad for not reading them. But the thing is like by bringing that to different social media platforms, like I would be on the train at home, and I wouldn't bring that magazine with me, but I do have my phone with me, and I am going to scroll through Instagram, and so like it is just sort of even following people like after they leave their work, like just interjecting a little bit of knowledge here and there. I totally agree with you, and I did feel awful for not reading those.
I did too. Before I'd go on a flight, and I flew a lot before COVID, I would get the big stack, and I actually would just rip out the pages that I wanted to read, and I'd come back from the trip and I still hadn't read a bunch of the pages. So then I'd be like, okay, well, I guess I'll throw them away now. But it just kind of felt guilty, especially if one of my friends wrote the article, right?
Oh, yeah. So, you're the worst. Yeah. Well, now you don't have to feel that because like you would take a lot of discipline, I think, to be like, I am going to read this on the plane, but then you could be like, or I could like scroll and I'm still getting knowledge. So it doesn't.
There we go. There we go. Scrolling for knowledge. Look at you. Look at you. Well, awesome. Well, hey, thanks for joining us. We've been with Dr. Jaclyn Garlich, and she's out of Boston. And if you haven't checked out her Instagram, we're going to post some information about that in the show notes. And your newsletter, anything else that we can find more about you? Anywhere else? Are you starting a TikTok? Are you gonna become a sensation there?
I really would love to, but I also don't feel like I'm as creative as these people. These like TikTokers are like legit. Like there's a lot of good optometry ones, and I'm like, oh, I am not that creative. Like I enjoy watching other people's, but no, I mean, I have my practice web Instagram, but I don't know if that's interesting to anyone.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you again, and everybody, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Optometric Insights show. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and join us next time for another incredible episode. Thank you.